This Week with Bob Mueller on News 2.
This week,
the police coverage at all Metro schools, to include all elementary, middle, and high schools, will be at the highest levels ever.
the Uvalde, Texas school shooting results in a visible police presence at all Metro schools starting now.
I do want to stress that everyone has a role to play in keeping our schools safe and our communities safe.
The goal to stop any violent act from happening in a school before it ever starts.
Tennessee has come too far to actually have something like that to plague its image.
It does not sound possible, but slavery is legal in Tennessee as a form of criminal punishment. There is a move to change that.
Then the rash starts, and that rash can last for anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks.
The president tapped top FEMA and CDC officials to combat the growing monkeypox outbreak.
What's good for Dollywood is really good for the entire state of Tennessee.
And tourism is the lifeblood of Tennessee, and the state is on pace to set a tourism spending record.
You know, I like them all. This class looked good, and I actually told the mayor that. I said, what a great looking class, and he agreed. And then we had one prior to this that was 40% female, and I was like, what a great looking class. So it's just, I think they all look good, and it's just exciting to see people start their careers in such a noble profession.
And the latest Metro Police Academy graduation class adds 61 new officers to the force, just as Metro Police begin patrolling outside every Metro Nashville Public School. Hello again and welcome to another edition of This Week. Metro students return to the classroom next week, and they will be met by increased police presence in the wake of the Uvalde, Texas shooting. There is a push to approve an amendment to the state constitution to remove slavery as a form of criminal punishment. And tourism is Tennessee's big dollar industry, and August will see thousands flock to the volunteer state. More in our This Week cover story. But first, the other political headlines of the week. In Tennessee, slavery is technically legal as a means of criminal punishment. It's in the Constitution. Now, state senators are trying to get that changed. Here's Chris O'Brien.
Slavery and involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime, are forever prohibited in this state. That's what the Tennessee Constitution says.
Tennessee has come too far to actually have something like that to plague its image.
But now an amendment on our ballot in November might change that criminal punishment loophole.
It's ironic that it's on the ballot in 2022 when I think it was 1865 when the slave was set free.
State Senator Ramesh Akbari introduced the bill back in 2019 before it weaved its way through our legislature.
What this will do is it will take that exception out. It will ban slavery outright. Whether or not someone is incarcerated or not, they can never be put into forced labor.
Though slavery hasn't technically been in practice for a long time here in Tennessee, both Akbari and Garland say the Supreme Court's latest decisions have made this amendment all the more important.
They are constantly trying to return laws from Washington, D.C. back to the state. For example, Roe v. Wade.
If the Supreme Court decides that states should manage certain issues, we want to make sure that our Constitution reflects how we feel so that we can never go backwards. You just never know what life will bring.
Symbolic or not, Garland argues that words matter.
To tell me that it's been outlawed, it doesn't matter. It does matter. If it's in the books, it matters because somewhere down the line, somebody's going to take it seriously and they're going to act upon it.
Amendment 3 is on our ballot in November.
The president is naming top FEMA and CDC officials to serve as White House coordinators to combat the growing monkeypox outbreak. It comes as the number of cases nears 6,000 across the country, 32 now here in Tennessee. Here's Alexis Christoforous.
With cases of monkeypox rising across the country, President Biden today appointing an official team to oversee the nation's response, naming FEMA official Robert Fenton as the White House monkeypox coordinator and the CDC's Dr. Dimitri Daskalakis as his deputy. This as California and Illinois join New York in declaring a monkeypox state of emergency. There are now over 5,800 confirmed cases of monkeypox in the U.S., nearly a quarter of those in New York City. But so far, no reported deaths. Long lines like this one at a San Francisco hospital becoming more common as vaccine supply fails to keep up with demand.
It's horrible. The rollout of the vaccines throughout this nation it's absolutely horrible.
And pressure growing on the White House to declare a national health emergency.
We're ready to go. We just need the vaccine.
Chicago resident Kyle Benter is in the final recovery stage, waiting for his lesions to fully heal after contracting monkeypox in mid-July.
It was akin to what I would probably consider to be like medieval torture because it was so long. It was unending.
So far, infections have been mainly among men who have sex with other men, but experts stress the outbreak could affect anyone. At least 4 children in the U.S. have now tested positive for the virus.
Once symptoms start, patients develop that viral syndrome, so the fever, the increased lymph nodes, the muscle aches, then the rash starts, and that rash can last for anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks.
Experts say monkeypox is contagious from the start of symptoms until the absence of a rash. They recommend avoiding close skin-to-skin contact, not sharing objects with an infected person, and practicing good hand hygiene. Alexis Christoforous, ABC News, New York.
President Biden's ambitious plans to fight inflation and lower health care costs appear closer to becoming a reality. But there are still some hurdles. Here's Alexandra Limon.
The Inflation Reduction Act aims to invest $400 billion over 10 years in fighting climate change and lowering healthcare costs for many Americans by allowing Medicare to negotiate prescription drug prices.
There's an awful lot of good stuff in this bill.
West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin says he's finally on board with what's essentially a smaller version of President Biden's Build Back Better plan.
It's a balanced bill. This is an energy security bill.
Senator Manchin is supporting the legislation in part because it would pay for itself, and it would reduce the deficit by raising taxes on the richest Americans and corporations. Republicans oppose the package.
Same Democrats who said that a $1.9 trillion spending spree would not cause inflation are now saying, listen to this, it's a good idea to raise taxes, kill jobs, attack American energy.
But there's still uncertainty. Arizona Democratic Senator Kyrsten Sinema has remained largely silent, and Democrats worry the proposed tax hikes could jeopardize her support. For now, the White House is deferring to Senator Manchin to win her over.
So I leave it to him.
In Washington, Alexandra Limon.
And Senator Kyrsten Sinema is now on board with that package. Tourism here in Tennessee is one of the top industries. Whether it's the Smokies, Graceland, or the honky-tonks on Lower Broadway, people come to visit in droves. This year, the state is on pace to break its visitor spending record by an enormous amount. State Capitol Newsroom reporter Chris O'Brien explains.
One of the things that we always talk about is that what's good for Dollywood is really good for the entire state of Tennessee.
It's no secret Dollywood plays a big role for tourism here in Tennessee. In fact, the Tennessee Aviation System Plan, a branch of TDOT, released a case study last year saying Dollywood brings in $1.8 billion each year.
Although we are about 20th in population base in Sevier County, we are 3rd in the number of tax dollars that are delivered back to the state capitol that help fund things throughout the state.
And it isn't just Dollywood that brings home the cheddar. Bonnaroo, CMA Fest, and the CMA Awards combined to pump over $100 million into the economy as well.
What's great in Tennessee is that we get to collect a tax from that visitor spend that last year was over $1.5 billion.
Tourism affects just about every industry. Every visitor has to travel, eat, and sleep somewhere.
It helps businesses not just at the tourist attraction, like an amazing place like Dollywood, but the restaurants, the gas station, the lodging opportunities that they might experience.
And the tourism industry is currently trending way above record numbers.
In 2022, we're up almost 20% over our record 2019.
Visitors spent $23 billion in 2019. That has us on pace for over $27 billion this year.
Stay with us. This Week continues in a moment. Welcome back. 19 children and 2 teachers died at the end of last school year in a mass shooting in Uvalde, Texas. As the new school year is about to begin here in Nashville, armed police officers will be a presence outside every Metro school. Police Chief John Drake and Metro School Superintendent Dr. Adrian Battle outlined the plan. Here is some of what they had to say.
The May 24th mass shooting in Uvalde involving Robb Elementary School sent shockwaves through all of Nashvillians. The fear of sending our loved ones off to school and seeing the sheer horror that happened to these kids, it was a tragic scene. Shortly thereafter, I directed Deputy Chief Mike Alexander to begin discussions with Metro Schools on enhancing our campus safety for all schools beginning this upcoming school year. But this morning, I'm announcing the police coverage at all Metro schools to include all elementary, middle, and high schools will be at the highest levels ever. And all of our officers will have car key access to school buildings. Beginning August 8th and continuing thereafter, officers will be present and highly visible in all elementary schools in an overtime capacity for several hours each day. A longer-term plan calls for school safety ambassadors, which would be MNPS employees who are unarmed but given a radio with a police frequency and will work closely with school security and police to ensure safety at the elementary schools. I've also sent a letter out to all of our retired officers asking them to consider applying to be a school safety ambassador. Middle schools will receive daily school resource officer coverage for several hours at a time each day on a rotating basis. Additionally, SROs will be teaching drug abuse resistance education, or DARE, as well as conflict resolution for all grades 6 through 8 in middle schools. All 13 comprehensive high schools will have at least 2 school resource officers assigned on a permanent basis. And our magnet schools will have a coordinated presence as well. We will have more officers in the history of our police department working in our schools. And we're doing this to strike the right balance between making sure that our students and our teachers are safe, as well as protecting our businesses and our neighborhoods. The plan that we're implementing does come at a cost of overtime officers as well as school safety ambassadors. And that's anticipated to be between $5 and $6 million. That I was appalled by the lack of immediate response by law enforcement in Uvalde, Texas. And to ensure everyone that our officers are trained to immediately go in and address the threat. We don't group up. When in my early training, we grouped up, went in a diamond formation, and went in. Officers are trained now that immediately they go in, and if they're shooting at us, they're not shooting students. And that creates a safer plan just to ensure that we will not wait around like they did in Uvalde for an hour, not even 5 minutes. We won't do that. We have to ensure that we are properly securing firearms in our vehicles, in our homes, and making sure that they're not available to juveniles to use in crimes. Responsible gun ownership makes our city safer across the board.
Safety has been such an intense focus for public schools over the last few years. Whether it was for safety from a deadly contagious virus that shaped so much of the education world since 2020, or the need to address the social, emotional, and behavioral health of our students to reduce bullying and violence in schools, or the focus on ensuring our school buildings remain safe from outside threats, such as the gunman who took so many lives at Robb Elementary, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, Sandy Hook Elementary, and sadly, many more. At Metro Nashville Public Schools, we have been constantly updating plans, adopting best practices, making investments, and working collaboratively to address these challenges in a way that makes our students and staff even safer while continuing to operate in a welcoming and productive learning environment. Having an active, duty police officer on campus, keeping an eye out for our schools and providing a valuable point of contact for principals and administrators is going a long way and giving parents, staff, and students a greater level of confidence in their safety. Having additional staff inside schools as well, whether retired police officers serving as safety ambassadors or campus support positions, will help us to ensure that we're putting our safety plans into practice. I think this is an appropriate balance between the desire for added security and safety and collaboration with the police department while not risking the criminalization of childhood behavior by using a policing response to incidents instead of our restorative approach. I do want to stress that everyone has a role to play in keeping our schools safe and our communities safe, safer from gun violence. Congress has a role to play in keeping weapons made for war out of the hands of those seeking to do harm in our communities. Gun owners have a role to play in keeping their firearms secure and away from children at all times by locking them up in a safe place.
Stay with us. This Week continues in a moment. Welcome back. The 95th and 96th classes of Metro Police recruits graduated this week, adding 61 new officers to the force. As Metro Police begin using officers to patrol Metro schools, the new officers are the tip of the spear. A proud day for the mayor, Metro Police Department, and all of Nashville, as 61 new police officers graduated the training academy and will soon be patrolling Metro Nashville streets.
This class looked good, and I actually told the mayor that. I said, what a great-looking class, and he agreed. And then we had one prior to this that was 40% female, and I was like, what a great-looking class. So it's just, I think they all look good, and it's just exciting to see people start their careers on such a noble profession.
Those 61 officers are badly needed as the Metro Police Department is short 200 officers. This was a large graduating class, but more officers are still needed.
I think we've had over 100 before, but we're coming up on session 100, and the theme that I'm asking our department to do is push for 100 for 100. So to try to graduate 100 officers for the class of 100. So with session 100, so we'll see. Yeah, fingers crossed.
The officers that will patrol Metro schools will do more than provide protection. They will provide interaction with students and establish relationships.
That's one of the things I totally believe in. I'm a relationship person. I believe in relationships, and the second core pillar of our police department is community engagement, and that's from our young and vulnerable to our very oldest of citizens here. But when you look at schools, and I did the Police Athletic League for a number of years, and some of those kids are now grown men and women that have played professional sports. We even had Golden Tate that played with the Tennessee Titans. We have Brandon Mueller, that's University of Alabama, is going to be a top pick NBA. And then we have teachers and police officers and firemen. But making that interaction, those young men and women now don't see me as Chief Drake. They see me as Officer Drake who helped them. And so those school resource officers play that same role. They get to interact in a friendly capacity when they need them the most, when they need advice. And I think it's just imperative that we are there to provide them that interaction that's going to make them better in the long run.
Changes are also being made to encourage more people to apply to become police officers.
And one of the things we're trying to get rid of is some of the legacy policies and actions that we've done just because we've done them. And Charter 2 is it's a military standard where someone may have had childhood asthma and that prevents them from being a police officer. But, you know, some people thought I had childhood asthma and I became a decent athlete, and look at me now. We have a commander on the police department that had childhood asthma, and he's doing well, about to be a deputy chief. Who knows how that's going to pan out? Or if you have eczema, we're not the military. We're not going to be deployed overseas for 2 or 3 years. We're going to be right here. So I just think it's some standards that need to be eliminated, that we can bring some really good people who are passionate about wanting to do this work into the business.
Officers on the campus and SROs in the school classroom can prevent violence.
We had a fourth grader bring a gun to school because they felt they needed it for protection, a fourth grader. And so we have to make sure we do all we can to keep people in schools safe too.
Do we have SROs in every school in Metro?
We do. There's a concerted effort that's never been done before in the history of our partnership between the police department and Metro schools. And so every high school has at least 2 SROs, every middle school has a coordinated effort, and every elementary has overtime, officers working in overtime capacity who we wasn't sure if they were going to sign up or not, but they're excited about the opportunity to do this. And so for the first time ever, we're just making an impact all the way through all of schools in Nashville.
Stay with us. This Week continues in a moment. I want to thank you for choosing to spend part of your weekend with us watching This Week. That will do it for another edition of This Week. We hope to see you back here next weekend for another edition of This Week. Between now and then, you have a great week.